South Africa is reeling from a seismic political earthquake that has sent shockwaves through the very foundations of power. In a move that reads like a Hollywood political thriller, General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, the fearless head of the elite anti-corruption task force, has done the unthinkable. He personally delivered an arrest warrant for Deputy President Paul Mashatile, charging him with massive fraud, money laundering and systematic abuse of public funds. What unfolded at the Union buildings this morning was nothing short of extraordinary, a moment that will be etched into South African political history. The scene was filled with tension so thick you could cut it with a knife, disbelief written across the faces of senior officials, and the unmistakable sense that the untouchable elites of the African National Congress are finally being forced to face the music. But before we dive into the explosive details of this historic arrest, make sure you stay with us until the very end, because what we're about to reveal about the hidden offshore accounts, the web of shell companies, the internal betrayals, and the billions of rand that vanished into thin air will fundamentally change how you view South Africa's ruling party forever. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. According to multiple confidential sources within the Special Investigative Task Team, General Mkhwanazi arrived at the iconic Union buildings in Pretoria just after 7:30 a.m. this morning. The arrival was anything but ordinary. He was flanked by a heavily armed security contingent, elite members of the Hawks, and forensic investigators carrying sealed evidence boxes. Witnesses who were present described the scene as surreal. General Mkhwanazi, a man known throughout South Africa for his iron will and uncompromising stance against corruption, walked through the corridors of power with a singular purpose. In his hand was what insiders have confirmed to be a sealed, high-level judicial warrant, signed by a senior magistrate and backed by months of painstaking investigation. Unlike typical police procedures, this was no quiet behind-the-scenes negotiation. Mkhwanazi walked straight into the Deputy President's office suite and, according to eyewitnesses, demanded immediate and direct access to Paul Mashatile. Security personnel initially attempted to delay him, citing protocol and the need for appointments, but Mkhwanazi was having none of it. "This is not a request," he reportedly stated, his voice calm but commanding. "This is a lawful execution of justice." Within moments, the atmosphere in the building transformed. Senior officials, cabinet ministers, and security chiefs who happened to be in the vicinity quickly realized this was no routine visit. This wasn't a consultation. This wasn't a courtesy call. This was the beginning of an arrest that could potentially tear the African National Congress apart at its seams. One senior government insider, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the moment with chilling clarity. "It was the loudest silence in the history of this government. You could hear people breathing. No one dared move. No one dared speak. Everyone understood that South African politics had just entered uncharted territory." So what exactly is Deputy President Mashatile being accused of? The charges are as serious as they are extensive, and the evidence, at least according to sources close to the investigation, is damning. The arrest warrant reportedly stems from a months-long investigation into a sophisticated network of fraudulent state contracts, irregular tender processes, and systematic financial misappropriation that allegedly took place during Mashatile's tenure in several key ANC leadership positions, including his time as provincial chairman and treasurer general. Classified documents obtained by the Special Task Unit paint a disturbing picture. Investigators have uncovered evidence suggesting that over 480 million rand in public funds was systematically siphoned from the state coffers through an elaborate network of front companies. These companies were cleverly disguised as legitimate community development initiatives, youth empowerment programs, and infrastructure contractors. However, a deep forensic audit conducted over the past 6 months has allegedly revealed that these funds never reached their intended destinations. Instead, the money was funneled through multiple layers of shell corporations before being redirected into personal bank accounts, offshore tax havens, and investment vehicles linked directly to high-ranking ANC officials, including several individuals within Mashatile's inner circle. The paper trail, sources say, is extensive. Email exchanges revealing coded language about special arrangements and alternative payment structures. Financial spreadsheets showing irregular transactions occurring at odd hours. Bank transfer confirmations documenting unauthorized movements of millions. And perhaps most damaging of all, property records linking luxury real estate purchases to family members of the Deputy President, purchased during periods when these questionable funds were flowing. According to one senior investigator who spoke to us under strict confidentiality, this isn't just another corruption case. This is a comprehensive blueprint of how political money laundering has been systematized and normalized within the ANC's power structure. We're not talking about a few missing thousands. We're talking about a parallel financial system designed to enrich a select few at the expense of millions of struggling South Africans. Eyewitness accounts from multiple sources inside the Union buildings describe what happened next as a moment of pure political drama. When General Mkhwanazi finally gained access to Deputy President Mashatile's office, the confrontation was immediate and intense. Mashatile, who was reportedly in a meeting with senior advisors, appeared visibly stunned when the general entered the room unannounced, flanked by investigators. "Who authorized this?" Mashatile reportedly demanded, his voice rising. "Do you understand who you're dealing with? This is a violation of protocol." But Mkhwanazi, maintaining his legendary composure, stood his ground. According to witnesses, he calmly placed the warrant on Mashatile's desk and replied with words that would soon echo across the nation. "The people of South Africa authorized this. The Constitution authorized this. The law authorized this. And right now, Deputy President, the law requires you to answer some very serious questions." The room fell silent. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Here was a Deputy President, one of the most powerful men in South Africa, being confronted with accountability by a general who refused to bow to political pressure. Within minutes, the situation escalated. Senior aides began making frantic phone calls. Security officers scrambled to understand the legal parameters of what was happening. Word began spreading through the government complex like wildfire, and by mid-morning, journalists from multiple media outlets had gathered outside the Union buildings, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. Mashatile was eventually escorted from the premises for formal questioning at an undisclosed location. While official sources were careful to note that he was not detained in handcuffs, a courtesy extended given his position, there was no mistaking the reality. South Africa's Deputy President was now officially a suspect in a major corruption investigation. Where was President Cyril Ramaphosa during all of this? And more importantly, what does he know? According to sources close to the presidency, Ramaphosa was in a scheduled cabinet meeting when he received word that the warrant had been executed. Multiple witnesses reported that the president's face drained of colour upon hearing the news. He immediately called for a brief recess and retreated to a private office with his chief of staff. This moment represents a defining test for Ramaphosa's leadership. Paul Mashatile has long been viewed as both an essential ally and a potential political rival. Their relationship has been complex, publicly cordial, privately competitive. Mashatile commands significant loyalty within certain ANC factions, particularly in Gauteng province, where his political base remains strong. Now Ramaphosa faces an impossible choice. If he moves quickly to suspend Mashatile, he risks appearing decisive and committed to fighting corruption, potentially strengthening his position ahead of the ANC's crucial internal elections. But such a move could also trigger a devastating factional war within the party, with Mashatile's supporters claiming political persecution and potentially mounting a counteroffensive that could destabilise the entire government. Alternatively, if Ramaphosa remains silent or attempts to protect Mashatile, will face withering criticism from the public, opposition parties, and even reform-minded members within his own party. His entire anti-corruption platform, the foundation of his political brand, would collapse overnight. Political analyst Dr. Thabo Mbeki, no relation to the former president, explained the stakes. President Ramaphosa is walking a tightrope over a political volcano. Whatever decision he makes in the next 48 hours will define his legacy and determine whether the ANC can survive this crisis intact. The response across South Africa has been nothing short of electric. Within hours of the news breaking, social media platforms exploded with activity. Hashtags like Mashatile arrested, Mkhwanazi delivers, ANC collapse, and Justice for SA began trending nationally, with many reaching the top of global Twitter trends. For millions of ordinary South Africans who have watched corruption scandal after corruption scandal unfold with seemingly no consequences, General Mkhwanazi has emerged as an unlikely folk hero. Comment sections and social media posts overflow with praise. Finally, someone with a backbone. Mkhwanazi for president, one user posted on X, formerly Twitter. This is the moment we've been waiting for. No more talk, action, another wrote. If Mkhwanazi can arrest the deputy president, then maybe, just maybe, there's hope. There's hope for this country, added a third. However, the reaction within ANC circles tells a different story. Sources inside Luthuli House, the party's headquarters, describe an atmosphere of panic, confusion, and rapidly forming battle lines. A faction loyal to Mashatile has reportedly begun emergency strategy sessions, with senior figures calling the arrest politically motivated, a constitutional crisis, and a dangerous precedent that threatens the stability of democratic governance. Some have even suggested that forces opposed to the radical economic transformation agenda are using corruption allegations as a weapon to remove progressive leaders. Meanwhile, another faction, one aligned with clean governance and institutional accountability, has quietly welcomed the development, though few are willing to say so publicly. They see this as a necessary purging of corruption that has poisoned the ANC's reputation and electoral prospects. The party is fracturing in real time, and the fault lines are becoming impossible to ignore. Paul Mashatile is expected to appear before a special investigative tribunal within the next 72 hours. There, he will face detailed questioning about the charges of fraud, money laundering, racketeering, and abuse of state resources. Legal experts suggest that, depending on the tribunal's findings, formal criminal proceedings could follow swiftly. If charged and prosecuted successfully, Mashatile would become the highest-ranking ANC official to face criminal accountability in over a decade, potentially since the arms deal prosecutions of the early 2000s. But this investigation extends far beyond one man. Sources close to the task force have confirmed that General Mkhwanazi's team has already identified at least 4 additional high-ranking officials currently under active investigation. Names are being withheld for now, but insiders suggest they include provincial premiers, cabinet ministers, and senior party officials. This is just the beginning, one investigator told us. What we've uncovered is a systematic pattern of looting that goes back years and involves dozens of individuals across multiple levels of government. The Mashatile arrest is the opening salvo. More dominoes will fall. Make no mistake, what happened this morning at the Union buildings will be remembered as a watershed moment in South African political history. The image of General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi walking through those corridors with an arrest warrant in hand will be replayed in documentaries, analysed in university classrooms, and debated in political circles for generations to come. It represents something profound, the idea that power, no matter how immense, is not absolute, that the law, when enforced with courage and integrity, can reach even the highest offices in the land, that accountability is not just an abstract concept, but a living principle that can be activated when brave individuals refuse to accept the status quo. For years, South Africans have watched as corruption scandals unfolded with depressing predictability. Explosive allegations, official denials, lengthy investigations that go nowhere, and ultimately no consequences. The pattern created a deep cynicism about whether justice could ever prevail over political protection. Today, that cynicism was challenged, not erased. The judicial process still has a long way to go, but challenged in a meaningful way. As one political commentator noted, whether or not Mashatile is ultimately convicted, the fact that this arrest happened, that it was executed publicly, dramatically, and without apology, sends a message that the old rules may finally be changing. South Africa stands at a crossroads. The arrest of Deputy President Paul Mashatile is not the end of a story. It's the beginning of a much larger reckoning that could reshape the country's political landscape for decades to come. The African National Congress, the liberation movement that overthrew apartheid and has dominated South African politics since 1994, now faces its greatest internal crisis. Can it reform itself from within? Can it reclaim the moral authority it has steadily lost through years of corruption and mismanagement? Or will it continue down a path of factional warfare and ethical decay until it becomes unrecognizable? These are the questions that will define the next chapter of South African democracy. General Mkhwanazi, in his brief statement outside the Union buildings, issued a declaration that resonated across the nation. We are not driven by politics, we are driven by justice. We are driven by our oath to protect the Constitution and the people of South Africa. no one, and I mean no one, is above the law. Not ministers, not premiers, not deputy presidents. No one. Those words will be tested in the days and weeks ahead. More arrests may come. More revelations will surface. The political establishment will fight back. But for now, at least, millions of South Africans are daring to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, the long arc of justice is finally bending toward accountability. The walls are closing in. The truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is beginning to surface. And history is watching. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to our channel for continuous breaking updates, exclusive political analysis, and real-time developments on this unprecedented crisis. Hit that notification bell, because trust me, the next revelation could shake South Africa even harder than today's bombshell. Share this video with everyone who cares about the future of our country. The conversation is just beginning, and your voice matters. See you in the next update.